What if this black magician comes back alive after being sentenced to death, causes chaos in the city with his dark powers, and gives the police a tough time? Will our detective be able to outwit him again and uncover the secrets of his dark magic? Watch the video till the end, as the movie reveals major spoilers ahead. The story begins in London in the 1980s, where the city is engulfed in despair. The source of this misery is a sinister magician Blackwood, whose dark powers have plunged the city into fear. His malevolent intention is to instill terror among the people and seize control over them. He has already sacrificed 5 women to the devil and is now preparing to sacrifice one more. The frightening part is that once his sacrifices are completed, he will gain immeasurable dark powers from the devil, which makes him even more formidable. Detective Holmes, the protagonist, is assigned to capture Blackwood by the London police. He stealthily enters the building and swiftly takes down the guard inside, paralyzing him with his incredible martial arts moves. After finishing him, he swiftly makes his way to the basement, where he peeks in and sees Blackwood performing magic, surrounded by his security guards for protection. At that moment, one of the attackers lunges at Holmes, and then just his detective partner enters the scene and blocks the attack, even though John is also a professional doctor and Holmes' closest friend. Following this, they work together to systematically take down each of the Blackwood guards, eliminating them one by one with precision and skill. The girl is about to take her own life with a knife as part of the ritual when Holmes intervenes, stopping her and disrupting the magic. Although Blackwood is exceptionally intelligent and clever, he is already familiar with Holmes and John. Then he proceeds to expose them one by revealing their backgrounds and personal life, but her words infuriate John. Soon after the police arrive on the scene, Inspector Lester thanks Holmes and John, praising their efforts in capturing Blackwood, a task that proved to be extremely challenging. The police then handcuff Blackwood and arrest him. As they lead him away, he threatens that nobody can stop and capture him. Eventually, the news of Blackwood's arrest brings a sense of peace and relief among the city's residents. 3 months pass and everything is going smoothly, but here, Holmes' mental condition is deteriorating because he hasn't had a case or any work for several days. He often experiences mental unrest and agitation when he goes too long without a case. John attempts to lift Holmes' spirits by showing him a newspaper report announcing that Blackwood will be hanged the following day. He also presents several cases, but Holmes refuses to take them on, deeming them all nonsense and unworthy. As he leaves, John advises him to get some fresh air outside and insists Holmes join him for dinner that evening, where John's fiancée Mary will also be present. He also requests that Holmes be polite to Mary and avoid letting his detective habits lead to any rudeness. Later that night, John introduces Mary to Holmes at a restaurant. During their conversation, Mary, impressed by Holmes's reputation as a renowned detective, asks him to reveal something about her that no one else knows to prove his brilliance. As John feared, Holmes exposes all of Mary's secrets. He reveals that she is a governess and discloses her past engagement by showing the mark of the engagement ring on her finger. The jewelry she wears is also borrowed from a friend. Mary, enraged by the revelation of his secret, throws her drink at Holmes. She admits everything, except she didn't cheat on her fiancé, but he was dead. She instantly leaves the place. John also gets disappointed and leaves, but it doesn't make the slightest effect on Holmes. The next scene takes place in a prison, where a security guard is in a severe state of pain due to Blackwood's spell. The jailer questions Blackwood about his intentions, to which Blackwood demands one last meeting with Holmes. John relays the demand of Blackwood to Holmes, and they both head to the prison. On the way, John makes Holmes realize his mistake, revealing that Mary had already informed him about her engagement. Upon arriving at the jail, a policeman informs Holmes that Blackwood has caused chaos with his dark magic. Holmes visits Blackwood and discovers that he has covered the walls with dark arts patterns depicting scenes of magic rituals. Blackwood recounts a story from his childhood to Holmes and offers him a chance to join him, believing that together they could become immensely powerful and rule the city. Holmes declines Blackwood's offer, taunting him of his death penalty. In response, Blackwood threatens that he will soon escape from prison and kill 3 more people, take control of the city, and challenges Holmes to try and stop him if he can, but Holmes simply turns and walks away in silence. The day everyone was waiting for has arrived, and finally, Blackwood is hanged for his crimes as per the law. John examines Blackwood's body and verifies that he is dead. A few days later, Holmes is visited by Edler, his old partner and former lover, who had left him and disappeared many years ago. However, Edler is also a detective and is even more cunning and clever than Holmes. She begins reading Holmes' files and discovers that he still loves her, though he is hesitant to admit it. She tells him that she has come to ask for his help with a case. She hands him an envelope containing all the information about a man named Riordan who has suddenly disappeared. She asks Holmes to find him. Afterward, she adjusts her photo on the table and leaves. Holmes wonders why Edler, a seasoned expert in her field, is asking for his help. Suspecting that there's more than meets the eye, he decides to follow her. Along the way, he uses various disguises to evade Edler's notice. A little further on, he sees Adler entering a carriage where an unknown man is already inside. It turns out that he had directed Edler to Holmes for assistance with this case. Holmes approaches the carriage and looks inside, but the man pulls out a unique gun and aims it at him. Holmes swiftly backs away and flees. In the next scene, on John's asking, Holmes recounts Edler's visit and the case she presented. John, already familiar with Edler's reputation, warns Holmes not to get involved, cautioning that she might deceive him once again like before. Holmes counters, explaining that the fact the unknown man in the carriage is controlling Edler and controlling her is impossible for anyone, which indicates that Edler is likely in serious trouble and genuinely needs his help. Then, Constable Clarkey arrives with news about Blackwood and informs them that Inspector Lester has requested their presence at the cemetery for an urgent meeting. Upon reaching the cemetery, Lester informs them that a man claims to have seen Blackwood strolling around there. John meets the man, who seems visibly nervous, but soon after admits that he has seen Blackwood strolling around here. Holmes examines some items surrounding the grave. Lester then gets Blackwood's coffin taken out from the grave, and when it is opened, everyone is shocked because instead of Blackwood, there is someone else in it. John and Holmes examine the man and identify him as Riordan, the same man Edler had brought the case to Holmes to find. Holmes spots one of his antique clocks. Discreetly, he takes it, and the two set out to investigate the mystery personally. While examining the watch, they visit a market where these types of clocks are traded. On the way, John assumes that some unnatural powers might be behind Blackwood's resurrection. Within a few moments, they locate the shop where the clock was purchased. In the vicinity of the area, they encounter a woman who claims to predict the future, but with her abilities, she provides them with the address of Riordan's house instead. On the way to the given address, John remembers he has a meeting with Mary's parents that evening and realizes he can't accompany Holmes. After a little argument, Holmes decides to go alone. At the address, he attempts to open the lock, but when it proves difficult, John arrives and helps by breaking down the door. However, Holmes was confident that John wouldn't leave him alone. Inside, they discover Riordan's lab, filled with various scientific chemicals, as well as clues and materials related to black magic. This suggests that Riordan was conducting experiments that blended science with dark magic. They also discover several dead frogs in a bucket. Nearby, they find some burnt notes. Through a chemical experiment, they confirm that Riordan was working for Blackwood. Then two more men arrive, and seeing the items in their hands, Holmes and John realize that they intend to set the lab on fire to destroy the evidence. Then one more giant and powerful man arrives with them. A slapstick fight erupts between them. The intensity is undercut by a playful and almost comedic tone. Holmes tries a good attempt and delivers some solid strike with a stick, but the giant swiftly responds and launches a powerful strike against him, leaving him in a vulnerable state. Meanwhile, John handles both of the other men effectively. Holmes asks the giant to wait a moment, then he tries again and attacks with all his might but misses. The giant swiftly overpowers him and throws him away. Fortunately, Holmes gets a weapon and the giant grabs his neck with all his strength, and just as he is about to faint, the weapon touches the giant, delivering him a powerful electric shock. The giant takes a brief pause, emerging in a critical state. This time, Giant asks Holmes to wait for a moment and pulls out a knife which touches it to an iron pipe. Holmes delivers an electric shock to the pipe, causing the giant to collide with another man and fall to the ground. Seizing the opportunity, the giant bolts from the scene. Holmes also sets out in pursuit of him. The giant soon arrives at a cruise factory. While entering, Holmes gives him another shock at the gate. Then Holmes asks him about Blackwood with the threat of the weapon, but this time, the weapon appears to have no effect on him. This leads to a chaotic chase, resembling a game of Tom and Jerry between them. The giant angrily chases Holmes like Tom, but Holmes narrowly escapes, dodging and maneuvering like Jerry. The giant repeatedly attempts several attacks on Holmes with a big-size hammer while destroying the cruise. Holmes strikes him with a small hammer, but it does not affect him. Meanwhile, John also arrives and fires at the giant, giving Holmes a chance to attack him. As he tries to escape, he falls when the giant throws a chain at him. John fires at him once more, and the giant breaks Cruise's chain. As a result, the cruise starts moving towards Holmes. Fortunately, John arrives on the spot just in time and saves Holmes. In the next scene, John and Holmes find themselves in prison for the destruction they caused at the cruise factory and throughout the town. John curses Holmes, blaming his stubbornness for causing him to disappoint Mary. John points out that he should be with Mary and her parents right now, instead of being in jail. Then they receive the news that Mary has arranged bail, but it turns out she has only bailed John out, not Holmes. A short time later, Lester arrives at the prison and escorts Holmes out. Outside, Lester informs Holmes that a powerful man from the town has arranged his bail in order to meet with him. Holmes sits in a carriage, and a man places a mask over his face. The next moment, the mask is removed, and Holmes finds a man sitting directly in front of him. The man asks Holmes that he must be curious about where he is and who he is sitting in front of him. In response, Holmes demonstrates his high IQ by deducing the route he was brought by analyzing the smells and sounds of the roadside surroundings. He identifies that he is now at the headquarters of an organization known as the Temple of the Four Orders. Observing the man's ring and the letters on the table, Holmes concludes that the man's name is Thomas, who is both the head of the organization and the chief justice of the town. Thomas is impressed by Holmes's keen intellect. He then introduces Holmes to two other officials of the organization, Coward, the Home Secretary of the town who controls the police, and Standish, the American ambassador. The three of them alert Holmes about Blackwood's plan to spread terror in the town and take control of it. They request Holmes' help in finding and stopping Blackwood. Holmes detects Blackwood's fear in Thomas and uncovers that Blackwood is his son through their shared appearance and demeanor. They offer to pay Holmes any amount to complete the task, but Holmes rejects the offer, saying he will catch Blackwood, not for them but for the peace of the people. That night, as Thomas is taking a bath, he feels an unsettling turbulence in the water. Suddenly, he starts to suffocate and his body begins to tremble uncontrollably. This is the result of Blackwood's black magic. He removes the ring of the head of the organization from Thomas's finger and lets him die. The scene shifts to Holmes and Constable Clarkey investigating the crime scene of Thomas. Holmes examines the bathtub and becomes suspicious upon discovering that there is no water in it. He questions one of Thomas's servants about the missing water, but uncovers nothing. Holmes then secretly enters one of Thomas's hidden chambers. Inside, he discovers a painting on the wall related to black magic. Here, Standish receives a call for an urgent meeting from the organization. Upon arrival, he finds that Crowd has made an announcement, declaring their desire for Blackwood to become the head of the organization. Standish expresses his decision to oppose it. Then Blackwood intervenes and comes in front of everyone. He gives the committee members an ultimatum to obey him and join his cause. Standish is determined not to allow Blackwood to become head under any circumstances, fully aware of the potential consequences. He draws his gun and aims it at Blackwood, who responds with a confident gaze. However, as Standish fires, he is engulfed in flames due to Blackwood's black magic. In the next scene, Holmes coordinates with the Constable Clarkey to recover the body of one of the men who attacked John in Riordan's lab. Holmes examines the body and, through analysis of the man's hair and nails, discovers that he used to work in a slaughterhouse near a river. John then informs Holmes that there is only one such slaughterhouse nearby that is situated on the riverbank. They reach the factory without delay and seize the opportunity to enter. Inside, they find no evidence related to Blackwood. They notice a code of Blackwood written on the wall. Suddenly, Blackwood's voice begins to echo through the room. Disturbed by the voice, they provoke him to come in front. Blackwood suddenly appears from behind. They quickly try to shoot him, but their efforts are in vain. They spot Edler chained and trapped on a slider, about to be roasted alive. With swift action, they manage to pull her from the flames just in time. But a cutter machine lies in wait up ahead. They push themselves to the limit, taking swift and decisive actions. They manage to save her from the impending blades at the very last second. She expresses her gratitude to both of them. Enraged, John rushes out to pursue Blackwood and sees him fleeing in a boat. John runs after him, unaware that Blackwood has planted bombs throughout the factory. The bomb explodes, engulfing the factory in flames and destroying everything. After some time, when Holmes regains consciousness and recovers, Clarkey warns him that Coward has ordered his arrest. He informs Holmes that John is safe and urges him to escape as quickly as possible. He then escapes just before Lester arrives. The next day, Mary arrives to meet John, whose back is slightly burned from the blast. The doctor advises Mary to let John rest, but Mary recognizes the voice and realizes it is Holmes. She accuses him, blaming him for John's condition. After Mary's harsh words deeply wounded Holmes, causing him to reflect on past incidents. Feeling himself as a failure, fueled by this pain, he resolves to capture Blackwood at any cost and takes his revenge personally. He meticulously takes out clues related to Blackwood and his black magic artifacts that he had collected, mirroring the methods Blackwood uses in his rituals. He works through the night until exhaustion finally overtakes him. When he wakes up in the morning, he finds Edler and John gathered around him. They both assure him that they are with him to catch Blackwood. Afterward, he begins to explain the mystery he solved overnight. He draws a black magic pattern on the ground at night, similar to the one on the wall of Thomas's secret chamber. The 5 points of the star each represent a target, one for Riordan, one for Thomas, one for Standish, and the fourth indicating that Blackwood's next target might be Parliament. Then Lastard arrives at the location with his policemen. He guides Edler and John through the back door with clues about the next plan. He then calmly surrenders to Lestard. The next moment, he is present before Coward, who plans to kill him. Holmes silently closes the chimney flue and reveals that he knew from the first day that Coward was involved with Blackwood. Holmes suddenly disappears in the cloud of smoke, but his voice cleverly traps Coward with his conversation, prompting him to confirm that Blackwood plans to seize power by killing all the top officials in Parliament today. Then he is found sitting in a chair at the back. Coward fires at him, but Holmes leaps out the window into the river. A short distance away, he is rescued by John and Edler in a boat. Holmes reveals that Lestard assisted him by providing the key to the handcuffs and that he was already part of Holmes' plan. He reveals that he had made Coward divulge all of Blackwood's plans. The three of them now head to the sewer of the Parliament to make their next move. Here Blackwood's dictatorship begins on the people and all the top officials of the city gather in Parliament. Meanwhile, the three arrive at the sewer, where they discover a Blackwood's mechanical weapon. Edler shoots the guard. Then Holmes and Edler investigate and try to understand it. They soon realize that the device is remote-controlled and contains cylinders of poisonous gas. The gas will be released into Parliament upon receiving a signal from the remote and killing all the officials. In Parliament, Blackwood appears before everyone and demands that all the officials bow to him one last time. Here, Edler suggests that, since they don't have time to destroy the machine, they should separate the cylinders from it. Then the giant appears once again. John tackles him from behind while Edler takes Holmes' cigar. Holmes strikes the giant with his head but gets dizzy. At this moment, Blackwood sends a signal from the remote, activating the machine. The two of them manage to control the giant and finally pin it down and grabs him. Edler uses cigar powder to disconnect the cylinders from the machine, but runs away with the cylinders. Holmes is confused by Edler running away with the cylinders, so he decides to follow her. Edler continues to flee from Holmes despite his repeated attempts to stop her, finally halting on a rickety bridge. Holmes catches up and tries to uncover the reason for her taking the cylinders. Just as Edler is about to reveal the real truth, Blackwood makes a villainous entrance onto the scene. He grabs the cylinder from Edler and pushes her down, but fortunately, she gets saved. A one-on-one battle erupts between Holmes and Blackwood, with each of them gaining the upper hand at different moments. They both kick each other and throw each other off. Holmes avoids falling into the river and throws a rope tied to an iron rod into the river, the end of which catches hold of Blackwood's leg and pushes him down, but he takes holds of the bridge's wood. Holmes then exposes Blackwood, revealing that his seemingly magical acts were nothing but tricks, such as bribing prison guard to fake their distress. He had already broken his coffin, and after coming out, he had fixed it with a chemical which Holmes gets to know after licking it. The cause of Thomas's death was a chemical developed by Riordan that induced a painful and agonizing death upon human contact. Holmes discovered this after learning that Riordan had tested the chemical on frogs in his lab. There was a plan to kill Standish. When he enters the headquarters, a chemical is sprayed on him under the pretext of rain. Riordan tampered with his gun, causing Standish to be burned as soon as he fired it. Blackwood admits to all the exposures and pleads with Holmes to spare his life. Holmes cuts the rope and entangles Blackwood in chains. However, the chains break shortly afterwards. He crashes down and the chains wrapping tightly around him while falling down, due to which he ends up hanging with the chain, and he ultimately dies. In the next scene, Holmes arrives and revives Edler. After, she reveals that the man in the trunk is Moriarty, a highly dangerous and cunning individual. Moriarty had been blackmailing her, forcing her to comply with his demands, including the acquisition of those chemical gas cylinders. In the final scene, Mary and John arrive at Holmes's house, only to find him hanging. Mary looks terrified, but John, knowing Holmes very well, understands that he would never do such a thing. John wakes up him by shaking him with his stick and demands an explanation. Holmes explains that he has figured out how Blackwood survived being hanged. Blackwood had been tied with a vest belt and held his breath while John was examining him. Later, Clarke arrives and informs Holmes that a part of the gas machine went missing the day Blackwood was killed. Additionally, the policeman who was guarding the machine was shot that same day with a unique type gun. Upon learning about the gun, Holmes realizes that Moriarty is behind it. Another truth is revealed that Moriarty didn't want the gas cylinder, but rather the main part of the machine that controls it. Edler had fled with the gas cylinder to distract Holmes and John, allowing Moriarty to come from behind and steal that part. Holmes then orders Clarke to reopen the case. The film ends here, hinting that the next part will be coming soon. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and turn on all notifications to stay updated with our latest content.